Students, welcome to Plus 2 Political Science class. Today, I will continue Lesson 6, the Legislature. I will discuss Day 7 topic, that is Legislature in the USA, the US Congress. Students, till Day 6, I have discussed with you Indian Legislature, and today onward, I will be discussing with you the US Legislature. It covers your pages from 222 till 229. This chapter is divided into 10 days topics, and as I already told you, I am going to discuss today day 7 topic, that is Legislature in USA, the US Congress. Before discussion of this today's topic objectives, I want to have a PK testing of yesterday's topic, that is the relation between Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Yesterday I was talking about Indian legislature. Now my first question is, name the subjects over which the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha enjoy equal powers. Name the subjects over which Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha enjoy equal powers. Yes, come on. Yes, students, there are 5 things on which they enjoy equal powers. That is passing of ordinary bill, passing of constitutional amendments, impeachment powers, then electoral powers, and power to approve emergency proclamations. So these are the powers enjoyed equally by the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. My next question is, how many total amendments have been done till today to the Indian Constitution? Yes, come on. Yes, there are total 104 amendments being done till today. Okay, the next question is, name the President of India. You must know this thing also. Who is present President of India? Name him. Yes, Mr. Ramnath Kovind is the President. And who is the present Vice President of India? Come on. Yes, he is Mr. Venkaiah Naidu. Now the next question is, name the total emergencies that can be declared by the President of India. Come on. Yes, there are 3 types of emergencies. First is national emergency, second is emergency in the state, and third is financial emergency. I have discussed about these emergencies in detail with you yesterday. And till today, financial emergency have not been declared in India. Other emergencies have been declared. The next is, state any exclusive power of Rajya Sabha. Exclusive power means which is not enjoyed by Lok Sabha. Yes, come on. Yes, the answer is power to create new All India services. This is the exclusive power of Rajya Sabha. Now I think so PK testing is over. Now I will discuss today's objective, that is Legislature in the USA, the US Congress, its introduction. As in India, the legislature at union level is called Parliament. Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha are its 2 houses. Same way, in US, the legislature is called the Congress. It has 2 houses, that is House of Representatives and Senate. Okay, first I will introduce it. Second is structure of the US Congress. Then I will talk about the powers of the US Congress. It has 5 types of powers, that is legislative powers, executive powers, financial powers, judicial powers, and constitutional powers. Then I will talk about the position of US Congress. Then composition and organization of the US House of Representatives. As I already told you, House of Representatives is the House of US Congress. Then I will talk about the Speaker of the US House of Representatives. Then powers and functions of the US Speaker. Then I will talk about the powers of the US House of Representatives. Again, it has 5 types of powers: legislative powers, financial powers, constitutional powers, executive functions, and judicial functions. And finally, I will talk about the position of the US House of Representatives. Students, this covers your pages 222 till 229. Students, here I would like to tell you that Congress has two houses: House of Representatives, that's lower house, and Senate, which is the upper house. But in today's lecture, I will talk only and only about the lower house, that is House of Representatives. But somewhere, if required, I will give you brief about Senate also. But the main focus will be on the House of Representatives. Before discussion of all these objectives, I would like to discuss the key terms with you. Students, there are some key terms which have already been discussed with you in the same topics lecture. That is ex officio chairman. Like Vice President of India is ex officio chairman of Rajya Sabha. Same way, the Vice President of US is ex officio chairman of Senate. Next is bicameral legislature, means legislature having two houses. Like in India, two houses are Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, and in USA there are two houses, that is the House of Representatives and Senate. Direct elections means where the public, the adult people, citizens of a country are the voters. They themselves go and cast their vote. That's the direct elections. Then secret ballot system means where the voters cast their votes secretly. Means the other people, no one knows whom they are voting. Then office of profit means government job. Next is residuary subjects. Subjects which are not mentioned in any of the list, means in Indian constitution. There are union list, state list, concurrent list, but there are some residuary subjects, means it is nowhere in the constitution. But in future if it comes anything, it will be considered as a residuary subject. Next is national purse, means total finance of the nation. Then impeachment process means power to remove the judges of Supreme Court, High Courts, Vice President, President, and other high officials. Then constitutional amendment means amendment to the constitution. Then pocket veto means when the bill goes to the president for signature, he may return it back or he may keep it on his table for unlimited time. Means he is neither passing nor rejecting. This is called the pocket veto. And then is judicial review. This power is with Supreme Court to check the validity of the laws passed by the union legislature or the state legislature. If it is unconstitutional, the Supreme Court can declare it null and void, means cancel it. And the last is casting vote, means that this power is with the Speaker of the Lok Sabha in India and the Speaker of House of Representatives in the US Congress, where in normal circumstances they don't cast vote, but in case of tie they vote. So this vote decides the matter. This is called the casting vote. So again in brief I have discussed all the key terms which were already discussed with you. Now I am going to discuss today's topics terms with you. That is, first is federal government, a form of government where states recognize the power of a central government but remain independent in internal affairs. For example, the United States government. This is the government, students, means the government is at the national level also, and there are some federating units like called the states. They have their own governments. So the states have their own governments and the center has its own government, which is the at the union level. In India, we have mixture of federal and unitary both. Federal system we have adopted from USA and unitary system we have adopted from the UK. So our country is federal in structure and unitary in spirit. Means we have both. Our states are also having powers and our union is also having power. Next is the single member constituency. A single member district is an electoral district represented by a single office holder or member legislature. It contrasts with a multi-member district which is represented by multiple office holders. Single member constituency has single seat from a constituency in the legislature. For example, Indian election system. Yes, in India, this is single member constituency, and same is the case in the USA also. Like here, from one constituency, like imagine Amritsar is a constituency in parliament, one constituency. So from Amritsar, one member will be sitting in the Lok Sabha, only one member, not more than one. So this is called single member constituency. Next is quasi-permanent house. Upper house is called a permanent body because it cannot be dissolved like lower house. You know what is lower house? That is in India Lok Sabha, and in USA it is House of Representatives. But upper house in India is Rajya Sabha, and in USA it is Senate. So upper house cannot be dissolved. It's a permanent. Every second year, one third of its members who complete their term retire. For example, Rajya Sabha in India and Senate in USA. Yes, students, the house is permanent, but the members have tenure. Each member comes to serve for 6 years, and one third members are retiring after every 2 years. So this is what the same system in India and in USA. Next is CTBT, means term is Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. Now, Fiji became the first state to ratify the treaty on October 10, 1996. The Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty prohibits any nuclear weapon test explosion or any other nuclear explosion anywhere in the world. The treaty was opened for signature in September 1996, and as by February 2021 has been signed by 185 nations. The CTBT is the last barrier on the way to develop nuclear weapons. It curbs the development of new nuclear weapons and the improvement of existing nuclear weapons designs. When the treaty enters into force, it provides a legally binding norm against nuclear testing. Yes, students, you see, there are some international laws to maintain international peace and security, and CTBTS is an example. So, this treaty was introduced just to maintain peace and to ban the nuclear test. So, this was introduced in 1996, and Fiji was the first country to sign it. And by 2021, total 185 nations have signed it. So why I have discussed it here in your key terms? Because when I will discuss the topic in detail, you will come to know that when the US President signed CTBT, then the upper house Senate did not approve it. So why upper house Senate did not approve it, and what are its powers to disapprove the work done by the President of US, that I will discuss in detail. Okay. Now, the next is Tsarist tendencies of the speaker. Tsar is an informal title used for certain high-level officials in the United States and United Kingdom, typically granted broad power to address a particular issue. In the United States, czars are generally executive branch officials appointed by the head of the executive branch, such as the president for the federal government. For example, Speaker in the House of Representatives. Yes, students, here I have talked about the czarist tendencies. It is a sort of adjective here, czarist tendencies. Actually, czar is a title given to the Russian emperor. You remember in class 10th when we did the First World War, that time we discussed that in Russia there was a Tsar Nicholas II who was ruling at the time of First World War, and he involved Russia into war, and the people protested there in 1917. The protest was so high that Tsar Nicholas was to withdraw itself, withdraw Russia from the First World War. In 1917, two things happened. USA entered the First World War, and Russia withdrew itself from the First World War. So Tsar is the title for Russian emperor, and due to his actions and all, this is a sort of autocratic system when Tsar is working. So his work is known as the Tsarist tendencies. And when we will talk about the Speaker of the House of Representatives, you will come to know why Speaker is compared with Tsar. Okay. Now, today's topic is the legislature in the USA, the US Congress. As I already told you, today I will be shifting from Indian legislature to the US legislature. And in India, the legislature is called Parliament, and in USA, the legislature is called Congress. Okay. Now, I will introduce the topic, that is the legislature of the USA is known as the Congress. It is the federal legislature of the US. Article 1 of the US Constitution explains two things. Now you see what are the two things given in the first article of US Constitution. The first is Congress has the lawmaking power over the federal subjects, and second is Congress is bicameral in character as it has two houses, that is House of Representatives, that is lower house, and the Senate, that is upper house. So this all is given in Article 1 of the US Constitution, that Congress is the legislative body and the US Congress is bicameral legislature. Okay. Now, first I will discuss about the House of Representatives, that is the lower house of the US Congress. I will discuss it through an example. This is the lower house that can be compared with the Indian Lok Sabha. It is directly elected house of the US Congress. The strength of this house is 435 members elected directly by the adult voters. The house has 2 years tenure. So students, you see, I have discussed with you Indian Lok Sabha also. Indian Lok Sabha has how many members? How many total seats are there in Indian Lok Sabha? That is 545. And there in US legislature, House of Representative, that is 435. And in what is the tenure of Indian Lok Sabha? That is 5 years. And what is the tenure of the US House of Representatives? That is 2 years. So you must learn this topic, and while comparing it with the Indian legislature, this will help you to understand it better. Okay. Now I will talk about the qualifications to contest the elections of the lower house. That is, first is he must be an American citizen. This is very common. Anyone who wants to contest election must be citizen of that state. Second is age must be 25 years or above. It is also in India. Indian also has the same condition. Third condition is somewhere different. That is, he must have 7 years residence in USA. You know, there many people migrate to USA and attain the citizenship. Means a person who wants to contest in election, he must have a 7 years residence in USA. And the fourth condition is must have a residence of the constituency from which he is seeking election. This condition is not applicable in India. In India, what happens? Suppose a person living in Amritsar wants to contest the election for Lok Sabha. He can fill the nomination paper either from Amritsar, or he can, if he has a good reputation in Delhi, suppose. Imagine this thing. He has good reputation in Delhi, means he believes the people of Delhi know me very very well, and definitely I will win if I contest from there. So he can do it. You have seen many Bollywood stars also contest elections from different constituencies. So they need not to be from that constituency. They are not to be resident of that area. But in USA, a candidate who wants to contest election, he must be resident of that state, that constituency. And the last is he should not be holding any office of profit under the government. And I hope you know the meaning of office of profit. Means that is the government job. Now, I will discuss in brief about the Senate, that is the upper house. So, this is the upper house like Rajya Sabha in India. It's also quasi-permanent house as one third of its members retire after every 2 years. But the house is never dissolved. This I told you already. House is permanent, but members are changing. Each state, whether big or small, sends two representatives to the Senate. There are total 50 states in USA. Consequently, it has strength of 100 members. Yes, students, this is something different. You see, in USA there are 50 states and each state is sending two representatives and it becomes total 100 members in the upper house. But in India, the membership is according to the population they represent. Like Punjab has total 7 members in the upper house, Rajya Sabha, as according to the population. Okay, but here every state has can send only 2 members. There is equal division. Okay, the Vice President of the United States acts as the ex officio chairman of the Senate. In India, also, the Vice President acts as the ex officio chairman of the Rajya Sabha. The Senate checks the executive. This is very important to understand. I will discuss in detail later also. Despite being the upper house, the Senate is more powerful than the House of Representatives. So, this is also very important. The lower house otherwise is powerful because in democracy, directly elected house is powerful. In India also Lok Sabha is powerful than Rajya Sabha. But here in USA, the lower house, House of Representatives, is less powerful than the Senate, which is the upper house. Now, I am going to discuss the powers of the US Congress. There are different powers of US Congress. First is legislative powers. The example is, there are three types of powers which the US Congress enjoys: delegated powers, implied powers, and concurrent powers. We can compare it with Indian legislative powers. The Indian Union enjoys the union list power to legislate on the union list. Otherwise, there is a union list, state list, and concurrent list. Same way, here also, the US Congress has the delegated powers, implied powers, and concurrent powers. Now, I will explain it through an example. The delegated powers are, there are total in all 18 subjects on which the Constitution delegates lawmaking powers only to the Congress. Yes, Congress can legislate only and only on 18 subjects which are given in the Constitution. Means directly, openly, only 18 subjects are given. And then comes the implied powers, means automatically which come along with other power. That is called implied. The Congress has the power to regulate currency and coinage. This is the open power, which implies the power to regulate banking industry. Means it becomes an implied. Banking comes implied power because this power can be exercised through them. Means that when the Congress is working on currency and coinage, so automatically it will regulate on the banking industry also, because banking industry is controlling currency and coinage and regulating it. Okay, so it is implied power. Then comes the concurrent powers. In India also, both the union and state legislature enjoy the concurrent powers where both can legislate. Same way in US also there are concurrent powers. Both the federal and state governments can establish and maintain courts and spend money to provide for general welfare. So you see, this power to maintain courts and spend money to provide for general welfare, it's common to both for the federal and the state governments. There are 50 state governments and one federal government. So it is common to both of them. So this comes in the category of concurrent powers. The US Congress enjoys lawmaking powers over all the federal subjects as enumerated in the Constitution, as well as the powers that arise from the fact that the United States is a sovereign state. Congress even enjoys the implied powers which have not been mentioned in the Constitution. Like in Indian constitution, there are residuary subjects, no, which are not mentioned in the constitution. They automatically go to the union legislature. Same way it comes here, the implied powers. Then third is the concurrent powers are given by the constitution to the congress as well as to the state legislature. So this is common between India and USA. Next is the executive powers. Example is the special powers of the US Senate, particularly the power to confirm appointments and treaties made by the President, were given to it by the Constitution framers with a view to make it the constitutional watchdog over the President's exercise of executive powers. Students, you see, this is very, very important. Means the president in USA, who is supreme head of the nation and first citizen of the world, he is checked by the Senate. If he makes any appointment, if he signs any treaty, it is checked or approved by the US Senate. The appointment of US Supreme Court judges depends on the approval of the US Senate. In 1999, the Senate refused to ratify the CTBT, which had been signed by the President of USA. Yes, I told you when I was talking about the key terms, I discussed you that when I will be talking in detail the topic, I will tell you CTBT, which was signed by the President of US, was refused by the US Senate. So approval was not given by the Senate. So this is an example that how the Senate controls the US President. The US Constitution vests the executive power in the President of the United States. Nevertheless, the US Senate keeps a check on it. This has been done with the view to check the possibility of misuse of his powers by the President. So you see, this is done before due to only one reason, that president may not misuse his powers. In India, our president is golden zero. He is just a puppet head. He is not a real head of the state. But in the US, he is a real head because there is a presidential democracy. In India, there is a parliamentary democracy. There is a difference. So, president is checked by the Senate. Next is financial powers. The example is the Congress alone has the power to tax. It passes the annual budget. It decides the quantum of foreign aid that the USA gives to other states. So you see, in all ABC points, I have talked about the financial matters. So here, in all these matters, who is giving approval? It is the Congress. So this is the financial power of the Congress. The Congress is the custodian of federal finances. It controls the national purse. National purse key term I have discussed with you means finance of the nation. The president is dependent upon the Congress for the finances needed to run the administration of the state. In this way, the Congress controls the administration of the United States and powers are exercised by the president. The control is made by the Congress and the powers are exercised by the president. The next is judicial functions. Yes, students, the word itself tells us something that Congress is acting as a court. In India also, Union Parliament acts as a court in case of impeachment. So there also the impeachment process is there when the US Congress acts as a court. The example is Andrew Johnson was the first US president removed by impeachment in 1868. Long time back in 1868, Andrew Johnson became the first president to be removed by the impeachment. And you know that who is the last one to be removed by impeachment? That's Donald Trump. He was the last to be impeached in January 2021. Yes, so both are very important. You must note it down and must write down in your question papers, in your class tests as well as in your exams. to make it more valuable. Okay. The Congress can remove by impeachment the President, the Vice President, judges of Supreme Court, and other high federal civil officers if they are found to be guilty of high crimes. The same is condition in India. Okay, each house has the power to punish any person found guilty of committing a contempt of the house. The Congress also acts as a court in case of impeachment proceedings. So this is what judicial function of the Congress means. Congress is removing these people, the president, vice president, judges of Supreme Court, and the other federal civil officers. The next is constitutional powers. The example is a total 27 amendments have been made in the US Constitution. Since 1789, Congress has approved 33 constitutional amendments, and 27 of these amendments were eventually ratified by the states and have become a part of Constitution. 6 failed after being sent to the states. You see, the amendment, there have been less number of amendments in US Constitution. Can you tell me the reason behind this? The reason is very lengthy process, very difficult process of amendment, the US Constitution. You know, if a US Constitution is to be amended, then the proposal is to start in the US Congress, in the both the houses with two-third majorities to be approved, and then it goes to the states, and if it gets a confirmation of three-fourths of the states, then the amendment is up. But it's not the case in India. In India, till today, 104 amendments have been done. Why so? Because in India there are three types of amendment procedures. One is very simple, where simple majority is required. Second one, you need two-third majority approval. And the third is little difficult, where the states also are to approve. So, but still you see, in just 70 years, from 1950 till 2021, 104 amendments have been made. But in USA, since 1789 till 2021, total 27 amendments have been made. 33 were approved, but 6 have been rejected by the states. And the 8th Amendment is the shortest amendment in the Bill of Rights. Bill of Rights means Constitution of US. It contains only 16 words, just 16 words. It is there in the 8th Amendment. The Congress has the right to initiate amendments to the Constitution with two-third majority in both the houses. Such amendments become part of the Constitution only when these get ratification from three-fourths of the states of the Federation. Yes, students, just now I explained you that's why the US Constitution has very less number of amendments. Now, there are two houses of the US Congress, that is the House of Representatives and the Senate. I am going to discuss the US House of Representatives, that is the lower house Congress. The US House of Representatives is the lower and house, and its members are directly elected to the House of the US Congress. Like the Indian Lok Sabha, it represents the people of the United States and is directly responsible to them. Naturally, it is democratic house, so it is elected by the people, so they are responsible to the people also. Otherwise, people can remove them in the next election. In India, the next elections are after 5 years, and in USA, this is the lower house, and the elections are after 2 years. It directly reflects the national public opinion. The difference between the Indian and US lower house is that of the tenure. Just now I told you. The US lower house term is of 2 years, whereas the Indian Lok Sabha tenure is 5 years. Now I will talk about the position and organization of the US House of Representatives. Means what is their position? First of all, I will talk about the composition. The strength of this house is according to the population. There are total 435 members in this house. This strength is sufficient according to the population of the USA. The members of the House are elected for 2 years. The tenure of the House is fixed. It can't be dissolved before the expiry of its full term of 2 years. Yes, students, here you see the difference between Indian lower house and US lower house. First is number of members. That's very much the reason is that according to population it's not anything so much major. The other thing is major, that is the tenure. The US lower house is for 2 years and Indian lower house is for 5 years. And one thing more very very important is, in India the lower house can be dissolved before 5 years also. I know that our Prime Minister Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee in 1996 he formed the government, and for how many days it continued? You know this thing? It continued just for 13 days. Yes, but in USA, the lower house has 2 years tenure and it cannot be dissolved before 2 years. It is to complete its 2 years tenure. Like upper house, Senate, each member is for there for 6 years, and lower house, each member is for 2 years. Means no one can be out before 2 years. House cannot dissolve before 2 years. Now I will talk about qualifications for membership. First is he should be citizen of USA, then he must be at least 25 years of age. He must have been a resident of US country for at least 7 years. This though we have talked about when we were talking about the these qualifications of the legislature. Now here typically talk is about the House of Representatives. He must be a resident of the district which he represents. The constitution only desires him to be resident of that state, but a convention has replaced that. It now he must be resident of the district from which he seeks election. Yes, student, this is very very important to understand. The constitution desires him to be resident of the state. There are 50 states. Means if anyone wants to contest the election from any district, he must be resident of that state. Maybe district may change. From any other district he can contest election, but a convention has started that a candidate must belong to that district also. The constitution is silent, but convention has started, and now it is being followed everywhere. He must not hold any office of profit under the United States of America. This is applicable in India also. A person who want to contest election should not hold any office of profit, means he should not be having any government job. The next is method of elections. The members of the House of Representatives are directly elected by the people. So it is direct election system. The universal adult franchise, single member constituencies and majority vote system are the features of the election system. Next is privileges of the members. The members have freedom from arrest during the session and complete freedom of speech and debate in the House, and members can't be questioned for this in any court of law. Yes, students, they can't be arrested during the session. You must understand the difference. Here it is given during the session. It's not during their tenure of the membership of the House. They can be arrested if session is not going on, but if session is going on they can't be arrested. And they have complete freedom of speech also, means inside the House they can speak anything, and there will be no arrest or no criminal action or nothing can be done against them. Okay. Next is sessions of the House. You know, the President Harry Truman called a special joint session on inflation, housing, and civil rights in 1948. You know, Harry Truman was the US president at the time of the Second World War, and there was a big inflation, housing problems, and there were many problems after the Second World War. So he called a special joint session in 1948. This is an example of a joint session called in US. Every year, the session begins on 3rd January. It's very interesting to know that in US, the session begins on 3rd January. Every year it happens. Maybe sometimes it started one day earlier or one day later, but it must be with some reason. Otherwise, it starts every year on 3rd January. There is one session a year of the Congress. Yes, there is only one session. In India, there are three sessions a year: budget session, monsoon session, and winter session. But in US, there is only one session a year. The president has a power to call a special session of the Congress during an emergency. In routine, the adjournment date is decided by the president, but adjournment date of the special session is decided by the Congress. Yes, you see students, adjournment means when the session will be over. Normally it is decided by the president, but if it is some special session, then it will be decided by the Congress. So this is the difference. Next is the Speaker of the House of Representatives. The Speaker is the chairman of the House of Representatives. He is elected by the House from amongst its themselves. You see, he is elected by the House. He is not elected by the public. When the members become, when the candidates become the member of the House of Representatives, the party which comes in majority, the party leader then is decided to be the speaker. This is how a person becomes a speaker in the US House of Representatives. He always belongs to the majority party, like the Indian Lok Sabha speaker. But like the Indian Lok Sabha speaker, he doesn't act neutral. Yes, this is a big difference. In India, the speaker, he is to act neutral. Inside the house, I am talking, not outside the house. Outside the house, he will favor his party, he will work for his party. But inside the house, he is to act neutral because he is working for complete house. He is not working for his party. But in USA, the Speaker of lower house is not neutral. He acts as a leader of his party as well as the presiding officer of the house. Means he is working for both party and the house. Now, the powers and functions of US Speaker are, I will talk it through an example. As he belongs to the majority party and is not neutral inside the house, so his position can be compared with the Indian Prime Minister in the Lok Sabha. Yes, students, he can't be compared with the Indian Speaker because Speaker in India is neutral, but Prime Minister is leader of majority party and he is not neutral even inside the Lok Sabha. This is the same situation of the Speaker of a US House of Representatives. He is also leader of majority party and he is also not neutral. So this can be compared. The next is the speaker, like Henry Clay exercised huge powers and authority in the house and it developed czarist tendencies and the house came under his autocratic control. Yes, example of czarist tendencies is Speaker Henry Clay. He became so autocratic. I told otherwise Tsar Nicholas was the head of the Russia during the First World War. Tsar is the title of Russian king, but now it is used as adjective for the autocratic heads. Now, Speaker in the Lok Sabha lower house of US representatives, he acts as autocratic, so he is compared with the Tsar. The tenure of the speaker is equal to the tenure of the House of Representatives, that is 2 years, because a house cannot be dissolved before 2 years. The speaker's tenure is also 2 years. Due to his status as the leader of the majority party, and his leadership of the House, the powers and functions of the Speaker are very important. The Speaker performs several functions in his capacity as the Chairman of the House. Yes, now I will discuss the functions of the US Speaker. First is Chairman of the meetings of the House. Now you see the picture. This is the picture of Nancy Pelosi. She is from California and is the present Speaker of the lower house in US, that is House of Representatives. The Speaker once appointed works for the complete tenure of the House, that is 2 years. Just now I have discussed this thing with you. In case he is to be absent due to any reason, he can name any member to preside in his absence, but not for more than 3 days. And in case of illness, not for more than 10 days. Yes, students, it's very important to know that when the session is going on, because session is once a year only, when the session is going on, the speaker can't be absent from his seat. In case he is to be absent due to any urgent reason, it cannot be more than 3 days. And if he is to be absent due to illness, means medical leave, then it cannot be more than 10 days. In case the speaker is absent from the house and he hasn't nominated any member to preside over, the house may elect a speaker temporarily to serve in his place. Yes, if he goes on leave, he is to like appoint someone as to work in his absence. But if there is no appointment uh, given to anyone, work is given to anyone, then the house will elect its own speaker, but this speaker will be temporary. The next function is conducting of debates. During the session, the discussions keep on going, and this is called the debate. In the Indian Lok Sabha, the speaker fixes the date and time and informs the concerned member who needs to ask a question to the minister during the question hour. If any member doesn't follow it, the speaker may take disciplinary action against that member. Yes, this though you must be knowing very very well that the question during the question hour, anyone can ask the question, but with the permission of the speaker. Speaker fixes the day and the time to ask the question. In the House of Representatives, the Speaker recognizes the members on the floor of the House and decides the order in which they are to address the House. No member can speak unless he is allowed to speak by him. He exercises quite significant role by exercising his discretion as to who shall occupy the floor and for how long. Same way as in Indian Lok Sabha, the US House of Representatives Speaker also, he exercises his discretion as to who shall occupy the floor of the house and for how long. Means time is given by the speaker and time duration is also given, means how long a person can speak. So this power is also power of speaker because this is inside the house. Next is his role as a party leader. The example is speaker work in the house is always designed to help his party in getting its policies and programs implemented. He participates in all debates and exercises his right to vote by casting vote. This time he uses the opportunity for supporting his party. He always acts to preserve, protect, and defend the interest of his party in the House. He continues to be a party man. Yes, students, you see, inside the House, he is not to act neutral. He is to favor his party. So naturally, he is acting as a party man, and he is no doubt he is not having any voting right. He cast his vote in case of tie, and that vote is called the casting vote. Otherwise, he is completely supporting his party. Okay. The next is to maintain discipline and decorum in the house. This is a big responsibility of the speaker. The speaker can order the galleries and the lobbies be cleared in case of indiscipline. He can't punish a member of the house for any indiscipline. Yes, you know that in India also the visitors are allowed in the galleries and lobbies of the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Same way, the visitors there, if they cause any indiscipline, the speaker can order that these galleries be cleared. Otherwise, he cannot punish the member of the house for indiscipline. The speaker has the responsibility of maintaining discipline and decorum in the house. Nothing can happen inside the house without his permission. And now I will talk about the position of the speaker. The speaker is a very powerful figure in the house and he is the leader of the majority party. Naturally, the leader of majority party becomes speaker, and moreover, he is not neutral. So naturally, he will act as a very powerful figure. His status and role as a party leader makes him a powerful person and helps him to exercise authority in the house. No doubt he is a powerful chairman of the house. However, he always thinks and acts as a party man and not as an impartial chairman of the house. Yes, students, it's very important to understand when he is acting as a head of the House of Representatives, as a chairman of the House, he should be impartial. But the US Constitution doesn't expect him to be impartial. It is he is to represent his party. So he is not impartial, he works partially, although he is chairman of the House. Now, I will talk about the powers of the US House of Representatives. The first is legislative powers. The example is the president has no time limit to sign the bill in India. Here I am talking and I am comparing the US president with Indian president. In India, the president has no time limit to sign the bill. He can use his pocket veto power also. Yes, if any bill comes to the president, suppose he don't want to sign it, so he can keep it on his table. This is called pocket veto. He need not to reject it or send it back. Otherwise, Constitution allows him to send it back once only. But in case he feels like to delay it without signing it, suppose he is going, his tenure is going to be over, and he is not accepting the bill, he can use his pocket veto power. But in USA, the in the sphere of lawmaking, after passing through both the houses, the bill goes to the president. If the president signs or if he doesn't sign it, and 10 days elapse, the bill becomes an act. So here also you see it's very important to understand. The president has the power to keep the bill with him only for 10 days. Like in India, Rajya Sabha can keep the money bill for 14 days. The Rajya Sabha may sign it or reject it, it's automatically passed. Same way, in US, the president can keep the bill only and only for 10 days. If he does not sign, if he does not send it back, it is considered automatically passed. But in case, however, the president returns it within 10 days, with or without proposals for change, both the houses have to pass it again with two-third majority. Yes, if the president sends it back, then both the houses are to pass it again with two-third majority. It is difficult process. But if he does not send it back within 10 days, then it is automatically passed. The next is financial powers. The Rajya Sabha in India has no power to introduce or make a change in the money bill. It can just keep for 14 days only. The US upper house, that is Senate, can't introduce money bill but has the power to make changes in the money bill. Yes, you see the difference. The upper house in India can keep the money bill only for 14 days. It can't even make any change. So you see the 2 points. But in US, what is the situation? Upper house can't introduce money bill, but it can make the changes. It can totally change the money bill passed by the US House of Representatives. Money bills can be introduced only in the House of Representatives. After getting passed by this House, it goes to the Senate. Senate has the power to make any change in it. As such, the Senate determines the final shape of every money bill. Yes, students, final shape of the money bill is decided by the Senate. Upper house means whatever is passed by the lower house of representatives, it can be totally rejected also by the senate can make 100% changes in the money bill. The next is constitutional powers. House of Representatives has equal role in making the amendments to the constitution. The passing of an amendment by the Congress requires approval by two-third majority in both the houses. Means both the houses need two-third majority in the constitutional matters. Here, both the houses are equal. Next is executive powers. The House of Representatives has only minor executive functions. It can appoint investigation committees for investigating the working of various government departments. The Congress, that is the House of Representatives, and the Senate together have the power to declare war. Senate can't do it individually. Besides this, the House of Representatives has not been assigned any role in the executive sphere. Yes, students, otherwise the lower house is not so powerful than the upper house in the US. House of Representatives has not been assigned any role in the executive sphere except the declaration of the war. And the next is judicial powers. The House of Representatives and the Senate both together enjoy the power of impeachment. The both houses can impeach the president, the vice president, the judges of Supreme Court, other high federal officials. Both the houses also enjoy the power to create new federal codes and decide their powers. So these are the points on which both the houses enjoy equal powers. Okay. The next is the position of the US House of Representatives. When I have discussed it complete topic with you, now we are to see what is the position of the House of Representatives. So, despite being the lower and popular house of the Congress, the House of Representatives enjoys less powers than the Senate. It is relatively a weak house. The Senate has been assigned a major share of powers. Moreover, its 2 year tenure makes it a weaker house. Its real importance, however, lies not in its powers and position, but in its role as a mirror of the national public opinion. Yes, students, we must understand in normal circumstances, the US House of Representatives is a comparatively weaker house if we compare it with Senate. The first thing is it's a tenure, it is for just for 2 years, and secondly it like money bill can be introduced here, but complete changes can be done by the senate, and so it makes it a weaker house. But somewhere it is important because it is a mirror of the national public opinion, because it is the democratic house. Public opinion is reflected in this house only. So now I have discussed today the topic, the US Congress, the lower house, the US House of Representatives. Now I have discussed the legislature in USA, the US Congress introduction. At first I have given, then structure of the US Congress. Then I have discussed the powers of the US Congress. Under this, I have discussed five powers. These are legislative powers, executive powers, financial powers, judicial powers, and constitutional powers. Then I have talked about the position of the US Congress. Then composition and organization of US House of Representatives. Then I have talked about the Speaker of the US House of Representatives, powers and functions of the US Speaker. Then I have talked about the powers of the US House of Representatives. Under this, again, I have talked about five types of powers. These are legislative powers, financial powers, constitutional powers, executive functions, and judicial function. And finally, I have talked about the position of the US House of Representatives. Students, you will read the pages 222 till 229. Now, I will discuss the topic related questions. The questions are discuss the structure of US Congress. Beta, here you will tell about both the houses, lower house, US House of Representatives, upper house, Senate. Then you will talk about their composition, everything. Okay. The second is explain the powers of the US Congress. Here you will talk about all five powers which I have just told you: legislative powers, executive powers, judicial powers. These all five powers you will talk. Then discuss the organization powers and position of US House of Representatives. So you will tell what is the position of the US House of Representatives. I told you know it is the house of the mirror of the public opinion, but otherwise it enjoys less powers if we compare it with Senate. So this all you will mention here. Then, who presides over the meetings of the US House of Representatives? Here we will talk about the Speaker. Okay, detail of Speaker will come. Then compare the powers of the US House of Representatives with the Indian Lok Sabha. Throughout the lecture, I have talked and compared U.S. House of Representatives with Lok Sabha in each and every point. So you will compare it, okay? And the next question is write a note on the role of the Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives. Here you will talk about the role of Speaker. As you know, he is not a neutral person. He is a party leader, and how he acts inside the house, outside the house means this all will come. Okay. The next is examine the composition and powers of the House of Representatives. You will talk about the composition means how many total members are there, and powers again five powers you will talk about. Then compare the composition of the House of Representatives of the USA and the Lok Sabha in India. Beta, here you will compare it, the composition of both the houses, Indian Lok Sabha and the US House of Representatives. And last is what are the relative positions of Lok Sabha and the US House of Representatives in their respective political systems? Discuss. So you will talk about the position of these two houses. So this way you will clear what is their position, and in Indian Lok Sabha is more powerful, or in US House of Representatives is more powerful. This way you will compare it. Okay. So I think so. Finally, you are clear about today's topic. I will continue with this chapter. In the next lecture, I will continue with the next topic. Till then, goodbye. You will solve all the questions and make good notes so that it helps you in future also. You will watch the video again. Okay. Till then, goodbye. Thank you.